You don't remember the moment it began. This is the first thing, the detail that will matter most later, when you are sitting in the wreckage of 7 years trying to reconstruct the timeline, trying to find the origin point, the specific moment when the thing inside you arrived. You will look for it carefully, with the particular precision of someone who needs an answer to a question that determines everything about how they understand themselves. And you will not find it, because it didn't begin. It was simply there, present from the start, before start meant anything, before you had language or memory or the capacity to distinguish between yourself and what you carried. You were 15 months old when Voldemort's curse hit you and fragmented against something no one fully understands. Love, sacrifice, the specific magic of a mother choosing death over survival. And in the fragmentation, a piece of him entered you. Not a large piece. Not the piece that contained his power, his memories, his identity in any recoverable form. Just a fragment. A splinter of soul, lodged in the scar above your right eye, small enough that no one thought to look for it, small enough that it lived in you for 16 years before anyone understood what it was. 16 years. Think about what 16 years inside a person does to even a small thing. Think about what a small thing does to 16 years. This is not a story about good and evil in the way the wizarding world prefers to tell that story. The clean version, the one with the chosen boy and the dark lord and the love that saves everything in the end. That version is true, as far as it goes. But it is a version that requires looking at Harry Potter from the outside, from a distance sufficient to make the shape of the story visible. From the outside, the shape is clear. Hero, villain, sacrifice, victory. From the inside, the shape is different. From the inside, it is a boy who was never certain, not once across 7 years, where he ended and the thing inside him began. A boy whose anger arrived faster than the situation warranted, and whose connection to a murderer's mind was intimate enough that he dreamed his thoughts and felt his emotions and once, briefly, inhabited his body from thousands of miles away. A boy who was told repeatedly that he carried something of Voldemort inside him, and who spent years understanding this as metaphor, as a statement about exposure, about influence, about the psychological cost of being the object of a dark wizard's obsession, right up until the moment he discovered it was literal. What does it do to a person, a developing person, a child becoming an adolescent, becoming something that might eventually be called an adult, to carry something like that? Not the knowledge of it, the thing itself, the actual fragment, present in every moment, in every decision, in every flash of rage that came too quickly, and every vision that arrived unbidden, and every time the connection opened, and something looked back through his eyes that was not entirely him. The wizarding world gave Harry Potter a title, the boy who lived, the chosen one. It gave him a destiny and a prophecy and a scar that the entire magical community recognized on sight. What it did not give him, what no one thought to give him, because the version of his story that everyone believed did not require it, was a way to know himself clearly enough to know when he was being known by something else. This is that story. All 7 years of it. From the inside. Part 1. The boy who didn't know. You sleep under a cupboard for 10 years, and you dream of a green light. Not every night. Not in a way that would qualify, by any clinical measure, as a recurring nightmare. More like a frequency, a thing that visits rather than haunts, that arrives without warning and departs before you can hold it. Green. Fast. A sound you can't identify, except that it is final. And then the dark, and then the morning, and then the cupboard door, and then the world of the Dursleys, which has its own logic and its own cruelties and does not, in any obvious way, connect to the green light or the sound or the scar on your forehead that you have always had and never thought to question. You are remarkable, and you don't know it. This is the first form of not knowing, and the most innocent one, the not knowing of someone who was never told. You make things happen without intending to. The glass at the zoo, the hair that grows back overnight, the sweater that refuses to go over your head, and you understand these events as aberrations rather than data, as strange things that happen rather than evidence of something systemic. You have no framework for what you are. You have only the Dudley's framework, which is that you are abnormal and abnormality is shameful, and the appropriate response to your abnormality is suppression. You suppress. 11 years of suppression, and underneath the suppression, something that is not entirely you is also learning to be quiet, to wait, to exist in the body it was given without announcing itself. The fragment of Voldemort's soul in your scar does not have consciousness in the way you have consciousness, not thought, not intention, not a self in the organized human sense. But it has something, a quality of presence, an orientation, like a compass needle that always points in a direction that has nothing to do with north. You feel it sometimes as a tightening behind your scar, as a flash of something, heat, anger, recognition, that arrives and passes before you can locate its source. You attribute these moments to headaches, to stress, to the ambient misery of life at number 4, Privet Drive. The letter arrives and changes everything, except the one thing it doesn't change, which is already inside you, already waiting, already pointing. Part 2. The Scar That Speaks. By second year, you understand that the scar is not a scar. Not fully, not in the complete, technical, this is a fragment of a dark wizard's soul sense that would require another 5 years and a conversation with a dead headmaster in a liminal train station to fully articulate. But you understand that it communicates, that it is a receiver, tuned to a specific frequency, operational whenever the source of that frequency is close enough or emotional enough or powerful enough to transmit. You understand this from the pain. The specific, localized pain that is different from any other pain you experience, that arrives not from external impact, but from somewhere behind the bone, from the scar itself pulsing with something that has nothing to do with your nervous system. Quirrell's proximity triggered it. Voldemort's proximity triggers it. And in second year, alone in the corridor with a voice that moves through walls and speaks only to you, something else triggers it, something older and more patient than the pain. Something that stirs in the scar with the quality of recognition rather than alarm. The basilisk voice. You hear it, and the hearing terrifies you, and also, underneath the terror, does something else. Something that feels uncomfortably like interest. Like the part of you that heard the voice is not entirely the part that was frightened by it. You are a Parselmouth. You discover this publicly, humiliatingly, in front of the entire dueling club. And the school's reaction tells you everything about how the wizarding world categorizes what you are. Dark, suspect, Slytherin. The association is automatic and total, and it will take years before you understand that the Parseltongue did not come from you, not from the bloodline the school assumed, not from some inherited darkness, but from the fragment. From the piece of Voldemort that looked through your eyes and spoke with your throat and left you standing in the middle of the dueling club wondering why everyone was backing away. You have access to things that shouldn't be yours. You don't know yet that they aren't. Part 3. The year the connection opened. Fifth year is the year you stop being able to tell the difference. Not always. Not completely. You are still Harry. Still the person who loves Quidditch and misses Sirius and feels the specific loneliness of someone who has been separated from their world all summer with no information and no contact, and the growing conviction that something is very wrong. You are still that person. But fifth year is the year the connection to Voldemort becomes operational in both directions. The year it stops being a passive receiver and becomes something more like a shared space. A frequency that carries traffic from both ends, and the year, therefore, that the question of where you end and the fragment begins becomes genuinely difficult to answer. The dreams are the clearest evidence. Not the anxiety dreams, not the war dreams, not the ordinary nighttime processing of extraordinary waking experience. The dreams where you are him, where you inhabit his perspective so completely, his body, his physical experience, his emotional state, that waking up is a kind of displacement rather than relief. You wake from these dreams knowing things you should not know, feeling things that are not yours. carrying the residue of a consciousness that is not your consciousness into your mornings, into your classes, into your conversations with Ron and Hermione, who can see that something is wrong, but cannot see what it is. The Ministry doesn't believe you. Dumbledore won't look at you. Umbridge is systematically dismantling the education you need. Sirius is trapped and you cannot reach him, and every channel of support that should exist for a 15-year-old carrying what you are carrying is closed or compromised or simply absent. And into that absence, into the specific vacuum created by isolation and fear and the complete unavailability of anyone who could actually help, the connection expands. It shows you the snake. It shows you your godfather. It shows you the Department of Mysteries. And you follow it. Because you are 15 and desperate, and something inside you recognized the direction before you had finished deciding to go. Something that was not entirely you. Pointing the way. Part 4. What the Horcrux wants. You don't know the word yet, Horcrux, but you begin to understand the concept. Not intellectually. In your body. In the specific quality of your anger, which has been present across all 6 years, but which in 6th year takes on a texture that is different from before, more available, more willing, arriving faster, and from further away. You are angrier than the situation warrants regularly, with a precision that targets the people and things that are in Voldemort's way rather than yours. You feel his obsessions as pressure, his focus as direction, his hatred as something that circulates through the connection and arrives in you preformed, already shaped, already pointed at targets. You are also, in 6th year, extraordinarily good at defense against the dark arts. You think about this. You think about the Parseltongue, about the dreams, about the way certain dark spells feel familiar in a way that your training doesn't account for. You think about the things Dumbledore has shown you in the Pensieve, the Orphan Boy, the Cave, the early iterations of a darkness that would become Voldemort. And you notice something you cannot say to anyone, because saying it would require a language you don't have and a level of self-examination that the year's demands have not left space for. The Orphan Boy in the Pensieve is not entirely unfamiliar. Not in his appearance. Not in his history. In something beneath both, in the quality of his self-containment, his watchfulness, his capacity to perform ordinariness over a depth that ordinariness cannot account for. You recognize this quality the way you recognize a face seen in a mirror, not because it is identical, but because the structure underneath is shared. You carry a piece of him. You have carried it your whole life. And the piece has been learning you for just as long as you have been unknowingly learning it. Dumbledore shows you the Horcruxes, shows you what Voldemort did to survive, shows you the objects, the logic, the terrible ingenuity of a soul that refused mortality so completely it made itself into fragments. He does not tell you, yet, that you are one of them, but something in the scar already knows. And it is very, very quiet about it. Part 5. The scar opens, the boy walks in. You die on purpose in a forest. And this is the most Harry Potter thing you have ever done. Not because it is brave, though it is. Not because it is necessary, though it is. Because it requires you to walk toward the thing you have been walking away from for 17 years, the thing that has been inside you the entire time, and to stand in front of it and offer yourself and trust that what comes next is something other than the end. You have spent 7 years being told you are special, chosen, protected by love, destined for this moment. You walk into the forest believing none of it and doing it anyway. This is the distinction. This is what makes it Harry rather than prophecy. The fragment dies when the curse hits you. This is the mechanism. The Horcrux inside you requires your willing death to be destroyed, the fragment requiring a host willing to offer itself. The fragment leaves. The killing curse, aimed at the Horcrux, passes through you and finds it and destroys it and leaves you, for the first time in your life, entirely yourself. You go to King's Cross. You speak with Dumbledore, or the part of you that generates Dumbledore, the part that needed a guide through this liminal place and produced one from the most available material. And in King's Cross you understand everything. The Horcrux. The plan. The reason Dumbledore kept his distance in 5th year, kept you at the edge of his attention, because the connection ran both ways, and proximity to Dumbledore would have given Voldemort access to his mind through yours. and the knowledge inside that mind could not be given to Voldemort under any circumstances. You were kept at a distance to keep him in the dark. The loneliness of fifth year was not failure. It was protection. You come back. You choose to come back. This too is choice, not prophecy, not destiny. Just Harry making a decision in a train station between what is next and what is needed. You come back into your body, and the body is yours now, entirely, for the first time. The fragment is gone. The connection is gone. The compass needle that has been pointing in a direction that had nothing to do with north for 17 years is still. And you stand up in the forest, and you feel the difference. Not freedom, not immediately, not cleanly. You have 7 years of the fragment's influence woven into your nervous system, into your reflexes, into the specific architecture of your anger and your instincts and your capacity for dark magic that always came slightly too easily. You cannot simply subtract the fragment and return to a baseline that never existed. There is no version of you that predates it. It was there from 15 months old. It has always been part of the texture of being you. What is gone is the weight of it, the orientation, the compass. What remains is everything it left behind, and the long, quiet, unwitnessed work of figuring out which parts of yourself were always yours, and which parts were shaped by something that never had your interests in its composition. This work does not happen at Hogwarts. It does not happen in a year or a battle or a moment of victory. It happens after, in the ordinary days, in the moments when the anger comes, and you have to ask, as you will have to ask for years, whether it is yours or the residue of something that is gone but left its furniture behind. The scar stops hurting. This is the last line of the story, as the world tells it. Neat. Final. The scar that connected you to Voldemort falling silent because Voldemort is gone. What the world's version doesn't include, what no ending can fully contain, is what it is like to feel that silence for the first time. To inhabit a mind that is unambiguously, completely, for the first time in your entire life, only yours. Not relief, exactly. Something more complicated than relief. Something that will take the rest of your life to name.